Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Chris Campbell and I am the wellness coordinator over at the Area 10 Enright Center in Wilmington and Ellisville locations. And today, what I want to talk to you about are some of the walking programs that we have through the Enright Center, and also in particular the Walk with Ease program. And I'm going to give you kind of a quick on how to start a walking program for yourself. So my background is I've done walking programs and all types of other fitness related programs for over 35 years. I have a master's in exercise physiology, but however, this program is through the Arthritis Foundation as an evidence-based program, and to help people become fit or fitter with through walking. So what I'll talk about today first is some of our programs at Area 10 at Enright Center as far as walking go. Like I said, the Walk with Ease is a 12-week program that we do a couple of times a year. And we do publicize that. Watch for the, or call us if you'd like to find out the next time that's happening. And we walk as a group and do, an education section part of it, and also the actual physical walking. That program is available, but also there are some continuous walking groups. That's a 12-week program, but the continuous walking groups go on year round. We do have the group that walks at the mall. Right now, that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the mall for mall walking. And we also have a couple different outdoor groups. The mall walking may go out into the outside as when the weather permits. And then we also have a hiking group that goes on. So there's a couple different groups. If you're interested in getting more involved in walking, to just let us know and we'll set you up with whatever group fits your likes. So today, I'm going to tell you a little about what it would take to get started with walking. And if you've already started walking and maybe you just have want some more information about continuing on or progressing your program. So the first thing I'll mention is just to make sure that it's okay for you to walk, assuming that you haven't been walking at all, or maybe haven't been doing anything at all. And I mean cardio, I just mean just moving around. It might be a good idea to get checked out first by a medical professional if you haven't seen anybody, at least in the last couple months, or if you haven't been doing anything at all, just to make sure your heart and lungs especially are in, and well and good for you to be doing some exercise like this, or also with your bones and joints. What would be, you might be dealing with a back issue or a knee issue, hips, and those are probably the most common ones. And whether or not that would be a recommended exercise for you. So, so if you're not doing anything at all, I would recommend the medical checkup. And if you are walking right now, maybe get started, maybe walking around the block, doing some walking on your own. We're going to just progress from there. But again, if you're concerned about anything, go ahead and feel free. Definitely step in there and go ahead and get checked out as far as before progressing more. So one thing I'll mention with getting started, besides the medical clearance, is something that's very important as far as the walking program goes, is that you have some good shoes for what you're doing. So good, when I say good shoes, I don't mean expensive shoes. They don't have to be expensive, but they do need to be something that offers you comfort and cushioning and support. Ideally, you would use a shoe that's made for walking, I won't rule out running shoes, especially if you wear running shoes most of the time and you're comfortable in them, and you're comfortable in them when you're walking. So I won't rule those out totally, but I would definitely rule out things like flip-flops, things like regular shoes that you wear around during the day just to go to work or whatever, or just house shoes, house slippers types of things. Just any type of shoe that doesn't offer, a good athletic shoe that doesn't offer support. So questions on any of these things, obviously, always feel free to come back around to me through email or phone calls. But so that's the main thing. We want to have proper fit for your shoes. If you're concerned about that, you can go someplace where they will help you find the right shoe for you, especially if you've got something like high arches or really flat feet or other types of biomechanical issues with your feet or lower legs. Get somebody to help you out. Okay, so other than that, you got your shoes and you're medically cleared to walk and you feel comfortable and confident to get started here. What I'll do is I'll talk about this 5-step walking program that we do with our Walk with Ease, and really it's a program that you could follow anytime on your own. So that's what I'm going to get you started with. And what we'll start out with is the fact that when you start with your walking, we want you to start with a warm-up. Okay, now the warm-up can be a couple different things. Generally, what I do with my people that are walking is I have them to walk for about 3 to 5 minutes, and that could be around the block or up and back. But to walk for 3 or 5 minutes at a really slow, easy, kind of sauntering pace and just kind of get warmed up. And even do maybe some exaggerated arm motions and just kind of get yourself warmed up nicely. And after that 3 to 5 minutes, ideally, you would stop and do some stretching. So the stretching, I'm going to show you the stretching routine at the end here, because basically what it is a stretching that you'll do a little bit of stretching as you warm up before you walk, and then you'll stretch again at the end as you do your cool down. A lot of people don't do that with their walking, but ideally, that's something that you would add into your walking routine just to help you stay limber, to help your just to avoid injuries. And so that's what I'm going to recommend, is that you do 3 to 5 minutes gentle walking, your stretching routine, which the stretching routine is very short, 7 minutes you'll be done or less, and then do your regular walk, and you can come back in, cool down, and do your stretches again. Okay, so I'll come back around to that. So as far as doing your walk, how far you walk and how often you walk and all of that, there's a couple of different things that factors that play in here. There's some variables to use as far as your walking program. And those variables are the intensity of your walk, or how fast you walk, the time that you walk, the duration of your walk, and also the frequency. How often do you walk? So those are the factors that you have to play with as far as your walking program. And I'll make recommendations, but again, you have to tailor this to yourself. So the first one that I'll talk about is the frequency. Okay, so if you're not walking at all, I would recommend going like every third day, for example. Walk, take a day or two off, walk again, take a day or two off, walk again. But it kind of depends too on just your general fitness. You might feel totally comfortable walking every day or every other day, as long as you're keeping them nice and short. So again, I want you to keep yourself, to make this decision for yourself. Another good rule of thumb that I'll highly recommend is, as you get walking more, is to possibly walk a little farther one day and then a little less the next day. A little bit more, a little bit less. So it's just a hard, easy principle of walking. And that's as you are progressing here, not as you get started. But see, again, if you do feel like you've done too much that first day or two out walking, you do need to cut it back a little bit and maybe throw in a nice, easy day and then just a little bit more. But so the duration or the frequency, you may start out with just 3 times a week, for example, of going out, but ideally you would get up to where you're going 5 times a week or maybe even 7 times a week. So that frequency is something that's going to be very important, and especially if you're dealing with arthritis, moving every day is very important. So even if it's just a short walk, every day it would be good to go out and do something. And so keep that in mind as a goal, is to get to where you're walking 5 to 7 times a week, even if some of those walks are, a 10-minute walk. So that's on the frequency, okay? So you're going to start out at around 3, get up to 5 to 7. Okay, so on the duration. Okay, so the duration is how long do you walk in each time that you go out to walk. And I'm not counting here the warm up, cool down, and the stretching. Okay, this is the main segment of your walk. Okay, so with that duration, it really does, again, depend on where you're starting from. And what I'm going to say is, if you're just now starting and you haven't been doing anything at all, and your fitness level may be pretty low, maybe we're only going to start at 3, 4, 5 minute walk. And that might be your warm up, right? So your warm up, you come back and you stretch and you're done. That may be where you start at, and that's fine. So you would go out, you take just a little bit of a walk, you come back and you do your stretches. That may be enough for you to get started. Okay, then eventually you would warm up a couple minutes, do your stretches, walk a couple more minutes, do your stretches. Okay, so you got the idea here. And then a little bit later, you walk, do your stretches, walk a little bit longer, do your stretches. Okay, so that middle section there is what we're calling our main workout, our main routine. And because at the end, we do want you to calm back down and slow back down and then do those stretches again at the end. That's your cool down, okay? So if you've been walking, say you are someone who's already been walking out around the block or maybe up and down the hallway in the winter months or someplace, and you're deciding to now branch out and walk a little bit more. So you just kind of need to keep in mind a couple of things. One is, if you change the setting that where you're walking, like instead of walking inside, you're now walking out in the neighborhood where there might be hills or wind and different things. Don't think that you can walk exactly the same amount of time, but you may be able to. But just keep in mind that it may be a little bit harder, and so don't overdo it. But let's say you've been walking 10 minutes in the house, for example, for just an example here, and then you decide to go outside to start walking. Well, again, go out the door, walk for about 3-5 minutes around the block once or down the street and back, do some stretching. And then from there, you see how you feel. You may go 5 minutes, and that's all you can do. 3 to 5 and 5, and there's your 10 minutes. You may feel comfortable enough going on up to 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes. And that's fine. But again, just keeping in mind that you want to progress slowly with this. Your body is going to thank you tremendously. And the last thing that we want to do when we start any type of exercise program is get ourselves hurt and then not be able to continue. And then you just, you're back, you're not even at square one. You're way back here just looking up at square one. So we don't want to do that to you. So I'm going to be very conservative with my approach here as far as getting you started, and you use your common sense with it all. So that middle section, that midsection in there, it may be 3 minutes at first or 5, but ideally you would build that up to where you could get as close as you can to 20 or 30. Now, again, some people may not ever be able to get to 20 or 30, all right? And maybe some physical limitations that keep you from getting there for whatever reason. If that's the case with you, then you do what you can. You do a 10-minute segment. You do your warm up for 3 minutes. You do your stretches. You do a 10-minute section of walking, and then you cool it back down. You do your stretches. You're done. Now, you could do that another time in the day. You could do a 10-minute in the morning and a 10-minute in the evening. The more you can do, obviously, the better for a lot of reasons. It's going to help you burn calories and keep your weight in check. It's just going to help keep your heart and lungs and your body physically healthier. For cardiorespiratory benefits, the longer you go, the better. The longer you can keep that heart rate up, the better. So I'll talk about that here in a minute with intensity. But you just you do what you can do. And if you get up to that 30 minutes and you want to go longer, and obviously if your body is up to that, there's no harm in doing that. Again, you might want to, at that point though, keep in mind that hard, easy principle. Maybe go a little bit longer one day, the next day go a little bit less, another day you go a little longer. So you don't overdo it and you get yourself in a situation of some overwork injuries with your feet or ankles or legs, knees, hips. So you're building toward a goal of about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But again, it is very individualized as far as what your actual goal is. Now, your goal may just be to get to up to 8 or 10 minutes, and you set that for yourself, and then just it can always be changed as far as that goal. You may get up to 6, 8, 10 minutes and find that, wow, I can do a little bit more. Or you might find that, yeah, after a certain amount of time, that hip really starts to hurt. And our goal is not to keep walking too much. Now, that hip may get better as you walk, but it may not. And you need to be really pay close attention to that kind of thing and not make anything worse. So good idea to keep in mind that if there's a thing called the 2-hour pain rule, and if you come back home after walking and 2 hours later, something's aching, you're just not feeling good, your hips are aching, your knees aching, maybe you've done too much. So you want to slack off a little bit next time, but that's called the 2-hour pain rule. So keep that in mind. And again, you don't want to cause any, it's very important to move the joints every day. We do want to move those joints, but at the same time, we don't want to cause them too much pain to where we're making the problem worse. So we do want to move them. Another thing to keep in mind is when you come back from walking, especially if you walk a longer distance, if you walk 10 minutes, it may not be that much of an issue, but if you walk up to 30, 40 minutes, or especially if you spend time shopping or standing a long time during the course of the day, you might want to come back and just go ahead and sit down and prop those legs up and let everything just kind of decompress. So we've got it now as far as our frequency. How many times a week? 3 times up to 7 times, right? We've also got our duration, starting with, 4 or 5 minutes, going up to 20, 30 minutes, or even longer. If you're trying to lose weight and burn calories, longer may be better for you. However, you again don't want to cause yourself discomfort and pain by going too long. So the last variable, and probably the most complicated variable, is the intensity. So when we talk about intensity, we're talking about how fast, how hard you're working. And there's a couple different things that kind of complicate, I don't want to say complicate again, but it's a couple things that kind of you can throw in there as some things that you may say that you're walking this fast, but you have hills, for example, or you have a strong headwind. Different things like that will kind of make a difference. So the terrain, walking on uneven terrain is much more difficult for you than to walk on something that's smooth and level. So some of those things are going to complicate that a little bit, but the idea, just in general terms, though, is that the faster you walk, obviously, is the harder it is, right? And so the speed and those other variables are going to throw in there too, are going to be thrown in there at times. But the speed that you walk, how do you determine the speed? Well, like I said, in that warm-up session part of it, you want to keep that speed nice and easy and just walking, and you're just sauntering along. You're enjoying the birds and the flowers and the people in the mall, wherever you're walking. But then when you get to your other session, in the section in the middle there, that's your workout section. You want to build up to a level where you're actually working that heart and lungs and doing that aerobic work. So there's a couple different ways you can monitor where you're at with that. The more scientific way of checking your heart rate is one way to do it. So I'll give you just a quickie on that, and then I'll give you another 2 ways to do it just in case. But the heart rate one is you can learn how to check your heart rate. First of all, you can check your heart rate on the side of your neck here on your carotid artery. And if you can find that, or you can find it on your wrist right in here in this little, right along the bone right there. You can kind of, along that tendon right there, you can find it. One quick thing about that is never to use your thumb. You do have a little pulse in your thumb. Use your fingers, find that pulse, whichever place. And the thing about your pulse is, ideally you would check it for a whole minute, but that's kind of hard to do when you're walking and maybe taking steps. So a lot of times what people do is they do like a 2 minute, or a 10-second count, or you could do a 15-second count. But for the purposes today, I'm just going to tell you a 10-second count. So ideally you would do that while you're still walking, because as soon as you stop, like if you're walking and you stop to take your pulse, it already starts to go back down. So ideally you would keep moving and take it. It is a little little more difficult to do, but with practice, you could probably get pretty good at it. So you take your pulse and you're walking. Now, how do you know what you want your pulse to be? Well, I'm just going to give you some numbers here to remember or write down, okay? It's a 10-second count, okay? So with 10-second count, you got your watch, or you've got a friend that's timing you as you're walking, and that's fine. That's great. That's even better. They tell you when to start and stop. If you're 50 to 60-year-old, if you're in that range, 50 to 60, your pulse count in 10 minutes should be 10 minutes in 10 seconds should be about 16. Okay. If you're in the 65 over 60 to 75 range, we're going to say about 15. And if you're over 75, it's about 14. Okay. And when I say about, I mean, yeah, 16, 15, 14. So that's a 10-second count. If you miss a beat, that really is going to throw you off. So get really good at that. Another option to do, and there's actually 3 more options, is to have a Fitbit or a watch that actually takes your heart rate. And this is a good Christmas present to ask for from your significant other, children, grandchildren, whatever, is to get a watch that'll just take it for you. So there's one way to do it. Another way you can do it is there's something called a Borg RPE, or rate of perceived exertion scale. And this is a scale from 1 to 10, and you say 10 is the hardest that you feel like you're going to fall over, and 1 and a 0, it's actually 0 to 10 is that you're laying on the couch and you are so vegged, you're not even hardly breathing. Okay, so your ideal situation in there would be to be in the 4 to 7 range. So you rate yourself on that 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. Oh, it's about a 5 as far as how do you feel your exertion is. So you want to be between 4 and 7. Okay, so that's another way you can do it if that kind of talks to you. Another way to do it is to go with a talk test. And the talk test is when you're walking, if you can carry on a conversation with somebody that you're walking with, or maybe it's just carrying on a conversation with yourself, or maybe you're singing. If you can do that pretty comfortably, that's probably a good, if you're starting to feel like you're just starting to where I can't talk, but I still can, but I'm starting to get to that edge. That's probably about right. If you can sing and jump up and down and just going at it, you're probably walking too slow. But if you can start to feel like every so often I have to take a breath, I'm going, and then, okay, now I can, and you can kind of talk, but so get the idea there that if you can't talk at all, because you're so out of breath, that's too hard. If you can sing and dance, that's too easy. So find a spot in between. But again, boy, finding a fitness watch, a Fitbit, that's great. You can find your target heart range, and you shoot for getting that target heart range as long as possible. And when I say long as possible, realize that's in that parameter of that 20, 30 minutes. So at first, when you're getting out to start walking, and you're going to that 3 to 5 minutes, and then a little bit more, don't even worry about heart rate. Don't worry about intensity. Don't worry about anything. You just worry about walking a few minutes, getting back home, walking a few minutes more, getting back home, and just keep building on that. After you get to where you're walking more than, more than 8 or 10 minutes of that cardio time in between there, then maybe start paying attention to, this is what my heart rate is. Obviously, you always want to pay attention to your physical well-being or condition as you're walking. If you start feeling like you're out of breath, can't breathe at all, starting having any type of chest pain, starting to have a serious knee pain, starting to feel pale or flushed, some of these can be pretty serious situations. So you do want to get to help, or at least sit down on a bench and rest and just see if you get feeling better. But so do always pay attention to those types of things, of course. But then again, just on that intensity, the intensity is the last thing I want you to pay attention to as far as your progression, but it is the first thing I want you to pay attention to as far as not going too hard, too fast. That makes sense. If in doubt, go a little bit easier. You can just kind of start building up and building up from there. But if in doubt, start a little bit easier, and then we're going to build up. All right. So, so I think I've covered intensity, I've covered frequency, and I've covered duration. All right. So again, warm up, stretch, warm ups 3 to 5 minutes stretch. Then that in the middle section where we're going to walk, we're going to keep building up that time, and then we're going to start building up that intensity possibly. And then we start cooling back down. So when I say cooling down, ideally, as you start coming back home or coming back to the park bench or wherever you started from, you start just kind of slowing down a little bit. And then you come to a halt, a stop. You do your stretches, and you walk to your car or you walk to the house. So you let your system slow down slowly. You don't go full speed ahead and then stop. That's not good for your system. It's not good for your joints. It's not good for your body altogether. So ideally you do start slowing your walking down toward the end there. And then you let your heart rate slow down. And then you start doing your last stretches. And you're done for the day. And again, you prop your feet up if you feel a need to afterwards. And let everything just relax a little bit. And 2 hours in, if you're feeling pain, then you've gone too fast, too hard, or too fast. So I'm going to show you these stretches. I'm going to try to physically show them to you. And just quickly on the stretches, there's obviously very important to stretch all of your body. And I would highly recommend that if you're not doing some stretching for your entire body, to do some, whether it's taking part in an exercise class of some sort or learning to do them yourself. Either way, always warm up before you do stretches. Don't stretch cold body. We do offer classes, the My Balance class, we do some stretching, the yoga classes do some stretching, the Tai Chi classes. And so there's always an opportunity to do it as a group, but then there is an opportunity, obviously, to do it yourself, but it's very important to do. So again, we're going to warm up, we're going to stretch, we're going to start walking. So, but what I was saying was, though, that, your whole body, it's important to stretch, but we're going to focus basically on the waist down as far as for walking. Throwing in a little extra stretches there before you walk or after you walk is not going to hurt anything at all. Great time. Your body's all warmed up to go ahead and do some stretching. So with these stretches, I'm just going to pretend that I have walked. I'm going to put this down here a little bit. My 3 minutes. I'm nice and warmed up. And so now I'm going to come back, and the things we're going to focus on are our hips, our thighs here, the quadriceps, our hamstrings back here, and our calves. All right. And again, that's the minimum. I highly recommend you even add in some extra stretching. I'm going to leave my head out of this for just a minute so I can try to show you my legs really well. So what I'm going to do, the first one I'm going to do is a hip stretch. Now there are seated and standing versions of most of these, pretty much. So I'm going to show you kind of a combination, and depending on whether or not you have a bench to sit on, whether you'd rather sit and stretch, whether you'd rather stand, it's your call. But there's 2 hip stretches. One is standing, and you're going to stand with a chair or a tree or something to hang on to, and you take your outside leg and cross it over your inside leg, and then you lean toward your chair or your tree, but whatever this thing is, it needs to not be mobile. It can't be a rolling chair or a sliding chair, or I may fall over. So make sure you're safe. Step over, lean toward the chair. You should get a hip stretch safely. And hold these stretches, ideally for at least 20 seconds, up to 40 seconds. The more you stretch, the better. All right. And then ideally obviously you'll turn around or stretch the other direction and stretch the other one, right? Okay, so that's the standing version of the hip stretch. Now the seated version, I'm going to bring my little ball chair over here. The seated version, ideally you're in a chair that you can stay safe. So if you are going to use a ball, just stay safe. But you're going to be seated, and you're going to take that left leg up on top of your right leg. Now you're not crossing at the knees like this. And some of you, if you've had knee replacement, maybe you're not supposed to be doing that. So follow your doctor's orders anyway. What you're doing is you're keeping your knee straight, and you're putting your ankle on top of this other knee. And then you're pushing or pulling across But don't pull down here, okay? You want to pull up here or push so that your knee stays straight and you're just pushing across or pulling. And again, hip stretch, right? Making sure you're safe, not going to fall over off the chair. And then obviously, leg goes down, other leg goes up, and you pull or push from the knee up. And again, 20-second count at least when you're getting going out. So there are the hips, sitting, standing. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and show you a hamstring while I'm sitting, and then I'll get up and show you a standing hamstring. But the hamstring sitting, pretty simple. Put that right leg out in front of you on your heel. Pull your heel back. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. So my foot is on the floor with my heel down and my toe back. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean down toward that toe. And two different ways I can do this. One is I can just put my elbow on my knee and I'm turning at the pelvis here, not at the waist. I'm bending at the pelvis. And I can just put my hands on my knees like this. The other way that I can do it is I can reach down toward the toe. Now I may be 5 inches from the toe. That's fine. You go as far as you can. As you get more limber, you may find that you can get all the way to the toe. Right, but you don't want to force it. You don't want to stretch too much. You just want to get a nice little bit of a feeling of stretch. Hold it. Again, we're going to hold it for 20 seconds at least. Back up. You switch. Same thing on both legs, right? Okay, now the standing version of that is you're going to put your leg down just like we just did, and you're going to lean back like this. So basically is you put that heel out and you've got good holding yourself, your support here, and then you lean, you just kind of stick your rear end out backwards behind you. You kind of lean forward and you should feel a good stretch right here. All right. And you can also pull that knee up to your chest if you'd like. That's how we've probably done it. Most of us have done it through high school sports and things. But really there's a way to do it with keeping your feet on the floor. All right, so that's the hamstrings. Okay, now the quadriceps, this front muscle. All right, and most of us have found that, in the past we did this kind of thing where you pull it up like this and pull it. If you feel comfortable and that's what you want to do, that's fine, but there is a way to do it. And it basically is, again, putting your foot out in front of the other. And this time we're leaning backwards and pushing that knee kind of down to the floor. So this back knee, this is the one we're working on. This foot is just support and goes forward. Push this knee down to the floor and rotate our hips backwards. And you should feel a stretch on this knee or across this thigh from the knee up to the hip. That's what I'm trying to say. So you should feel that. Do not let that bottom toe or knee go past that toe. It should stay back, but you should be leaning back. It's a little bit harder one to do. You might want to do the seated version. But either way, if you have a good something to hang on to sturdy, you can practice on the standing ones as well. Seated, what you're going to do is you get into a chair that's where you can put one knee down. This ball is not ideal for this. You'd probably be better off in this other chair. But you put your knee down like this, and I'll just show you this other chair. Put your knee down so your right knee is down and you're leaning backwards. Again, turning at the pelvis here, and not at the waist. And so you're backwards, and you should feel the stretch right here in your quadricep. All right, so then you would turn around and go the other direction as well. So you've got your quad stretches, either standing or sitting. Okay, now the next would be the calves. And the calves are a little bit more difficult to do sitting, but you can lean down. Show you what I'm doing here with my feet. If you're seated, you can put that knee down and push back on your foot. So your foot is on your toes here and you're pushing backwards. And apologize for my dog has decided to visit me here. Pushing backwards and feel that stretch on that calf. All right, standing version. You have your chair, tree, and you are doing this where you put this one foot forward and other foot back, and you lean down, go forward, and you feel the stretch on that back calf. And some of you may have learned to do this on a step or a curb or something where you put your foot up on it and you do this as well. And that's fine, just being very careful not to lose your balance on that one. If you're trying to do that on a chair, as you can see, you may come backwards on it. Same thing on a curb. If you're trying to stand on the curb and you don't have anything to hang on to, you could fall backwards. So be very careful with that one. You're better off keeping both of your feet on the floor and just doing this leaning forward motion, okay? So we always want to be safe. And so those are the stretches, and I'm going to say very important for your walking, to continue walking and be healthy and be able to continue keeping your walking up and not get injured and can't walk. So stretches, and I'm happy to make those available to you in an email form or some other form if you decide if you want to have those written so you can see them. Another way to learn them is to come to, again, one of our classes, the Walk with Ease group or the balance class, and you'll learn some of those stretches as well. Do them a few times and you'll have them down. So we're going to, I'm going to finish up here by talking about some other aspects of walking and some other things to keep in mind. I've mentioned the 2-hour pain rule. I've mentioned the intensity as far as the heart rate, the Borg RPE scale, the talk test, and also, that fitness walking type of watch. So any of those options would be fine. You just have to work with what speaks to you the best. So some other things I want to mention. I think I did talk about building that time up to 20, 30 minutes at least, right? And maybe even up higher. Separating that time into 2 different walks if you need to, and they don't have to be the same. Another thing I want to mention about progression. With progression, it's good to have a starting point. So what you can do with a starting point is you can go to a track and see, how far you can walk. You may walk before you get uncomfortable. So it may be a lap and a half. It may be 3 laps. And that's a starting point, right? You may know right now that what you can do is 1 lap around the block. That's your starting point. You may do some kind of a test. We do a 12-minute walk test in our walking group where we go to the track and walk for 12 minutes. How far can you go in 12 minutes? So there's different ways to do that. And you just find something that works for you as far as where you're starting at. And it's really nice to have that because that way when you're making some progress and you feel good about yourself and it's like, wow, I'm feeling stronger. And so really good to have that starting place. And then down the road, you just do, you can compare to, now obviously I can walk 5 blocks and 5 times around the block or 5 laps around the track, whereas before I could only walk 2. And easy enough, right? So that's one way to measure your intensity. Another thing you can measure your progress. Another thing you can do is you can keep an eye on your heart rate and how, as far as how long can you keep your heart rate up. As you get stronger, you'll be able to keep that heart rate up longer. And again, just progressing slowly. You can also measure your fitness by how your resting heart rate is responding. So as you get more fit, your resting heart rate will go down. And that's best taken right out of bed in the morning before you even get up. Now, another thing about heart rates I don't think I mentioned earlier is one thing to keep in mind with heart rates is you may be on some kind of medication that affects what your heart rate is doing. So if that's the case, you may want to use another way to monitor your intensity level. Okay, so if you're on a medication that's keeping your heart rate really low, you want to do that by the talk test or the Borg scale of how you're feeling. All right. Another thing about progression is I think I mentioned building up just slowly, right? As far as you're walking, you go from 3 to 5 minutes to 4, 6, 7 minutes into 10 minutes, 12 minutes. and on up, and that's it, you're walking. But it may not always be a linear progression like that. It may not be just that like this. You may run into something where one week you are sick, or one week you are busy taking care of your grandkids so much that you can't get anything else done. You may need to go back down a little bit, start again a little bit. So, and stop talking in those terms, but the idea would be that, you build up, but sometimes you're going to have a little bit of a plateau, or maybe even back down before you can go back up again. And for whatever reason it is. And so don't feel like, okay, I'm at 20 minutes. So now, even though I've had 2 weeks off for whatever reason, now I'm going to go back to 20 minutes again. You're smart. You know that's not going to happen. That's not the best thing. So you may have to go back down. You may not have to go back down unless you're off for a long time. You don't have to go back down to 0, but you may have to back it back down to get going again. So keep that in mind, again, to stay well and not hurting yourself. Another thing to keep in mind is that, again, I think there is a limit to all of us. We have no idea where that is exactly. So one person's limit may be down here. You may have to really just stop at 10, 12 minutes. Another person may be able to go up to 30, 40 minutes or longer and not have any physical discomfort. So you really need to find what works for you, but you also have to keep in mind what kind of time constraints you have on your day. You may not have time to go for a 40-minute walk, but you may have time to go for 2 20-minute walks. So keep that in mind, and that's good as well. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're trying to build your once you get going really to where you feel like you're getting stronger and you want to make it a little bit more difficult, I would recommend finding hillier locations to walk and finding some hills to walk. I would not recommend carrying dumbbells with you when you're walking. They can throw off your walking gait and make you kind of walk a little funny, and can possibly then cause some issues with your spine or your hips or your knees. So I would recommend always continuing your good walking form, shoulders back, chin back, good arm movement, straight ahead leg movement. Nothing fancy as far as ankle weights, definitely not, even hand weights. If you feel a need to carry extra weight, I would put it in a string bag or a small backpack and put it on your back and wear it. And I wouldn't put a whole lot on there. Extra weight on you is extra weight every time your foot comes down. Okay. So I would recommend that if you get to a point where you're feeling a need to do something like that, maybe come talk to me and we'll find you a cross-training type of program where you could walk. And then you could also do maybe some biking on an exercise bike, or some swimming or something different to add a little extra into your routine. Some different things that we can do to kind of increase that intensity and increase that time without causing you excess pounding on those joints. You can walk further, but and faster, walk more hills, and those types of things. But again, I wouldn't add weight to your steps if you don't need to. Another thing is making sure you're well hydrated before you walk in the morning, whenever you walk, well hydrated after you walk, even carrying water while you're walking if it's warm outside, or especially if you're walking for more than 10 or 15 minutes, maybe just carrying some water with you, take a couple sips. So staying well hydrated would be another really important thing. I did talk about that hard, easy principle. So I want to go back to that for just a moment. And so even when you're feeling like you're getting a lot stronger and you're progressing up like this, a good idea to not go hard every day is to go hard one day, a little bit easier the next day, hard again the third day, or even hard, easy, hard, easy. You really need to listen to your body on that. One day you may go for say you get up to where you're hiking with us and you do a 1-hour hike. The next day, I would recommend you do a little 10-minute walk in the morning, maybe a 10 or 15-minute walk in the afternoon, and just really take it easy on your body. And then the next day, build back up again until it's time to hike again. If you do a hike, which you're out on the trail and you're different ground up and down hills, different things, a little harder on you, fine. But again, you come home, you rest those legs, you prop them up, you let everything decompress. The next day you take a little bit easier, and then you just build up again. So that hard, easy principle is going to be very important for you to continue your walking program without getting hurt. I don't want you to feel like, okay, I'm up to 20 minutes or I'm up to 25 minutes. Now I have to do 20 minutes every day. I have to do 20 minutes every time I walk. It's like, no, if you get that mentality, you're going to be more likely to have yourself injured. So I really want you to really try to relax on that and think, okay, yes, I'm up to 20 or 30 minutes, but some days in between, I need to only walk, 10 or 15 minutes. Or maybe even just take the day off totally and just do something different. And something different could be anything from swimming or getting in the pool and just playing. If you have access to that, great. I applaud you. That's a wonderful thing, the water exercise. It may be taking a bike ride or an exercise bike. It could just be playing out in the yard and the grandkids or doing some gardening or something, just something different. So I'm really a big fan of the cross training idea. So again, I know this is a walking class, walking program, but I really want you to keep in mind that we don't want you to walk so much that you end up injured. So building up carefully and gradually, and then if you get to a point where you're getting to where you're starting to cause yourself too much pain or discomfort or tiredness from it all, maybe we should talk about something else in there. The last thing I'll mention is just again is a couple little things as far as biomechanics of walking. And I did mention, having that good posture, so standing up straight, shoulders back, keeping that arm motion. Hands are not like this. Your hands are nice and relaxed when you walk. Okay, arms are going straight forward. Ideally, they don't swing front back and forth. They go straight forward like this, keeping those shoulders down. If you bring in those shoulders up, tensing them, you're going to feel much more, possible pain and tightness in these shoulders. So you really need to try to remember to take a nice deep breath before you walk and keep those shoulders low, swing those arms nice and slow and easy. Take nice regular steps. Never try to take a long step or a short step with your regular walking, just a nice steady step, making sure that you're keeping those muscles tight in your belly. You're breathing, nice deep breaths and out, nice deep breaths and out. Okay, one thing about surfaces too is that I mentioned the hiking. We do hikes every week with Invention Center, and again, those hikes, you have different terrain, right? You have mud and you have dirt and stepping over stumps and things, and you have a lot of different. So that would be something I would consider something to aspire to if you're interested in such, but something you don't start at, right? And the idea of starting is you want to be on something nice and level, and you want to build yourself up. Now, as far as surfaces go, let me change that. As far as surfaces go, if you're dealing with arthritis in the knees and the hips and the ankles, you might find that you don't really want to be on any uneven surfaces. You may really need to stay with the flat paved surface, and that might be best for you. Being very careful if you decide to try something a little bit more uneven. If you have serious balance issues, again, it may be a time to stay on the nice flat surfaces for a while and don't venture off into uneven surfaces. Another thing I'll mention is the invention of a walking stick, which was quite a while back, by the way, for invention of walking sticks. But these days, I don't know if you've noticed, they've got the different types. So you do have some that you can buy that are the metal that will go down into a really small, compact size. And then when you get out of the car and you want to walk, you pull it out like this, and it's a nice little walking stick. You can also use any type of a wooden stick, and you could use something more like a cane. But those are a great way to go as far as having that third leg and a little extra balance and a little extra, especially if you're going off the beaten path, to have a little extra help with staying upright, I guess I'd say. And I use the walking stick anytime I go off hiking, off road, and have had very good results with it. I think you will too if you haven't tried it. And even walking on the pavement, though, having that third leg, I think you'll find very helpful. And I highly recommend it. So I think we've covered everything. So I'm going to go through it one more time as far as that is that the plan here is to walk briefly, or not briefly, walk carefully, slowly, warming up, sauntering through the mall or on through your neighborhood, 3 to 5 minutes, stop someplace, do your stretches. And when you think of your stretches, the easy way to do it is just to realize that you're going from the hips down to the ankles or the calves. So, and when I say calves, really that's calves and Achilles tendon too. So, and you could even do some ankle circles in there too. I would highly recommend it. So, so you're just going to go do your stretches, hips, thighs, front and back, calves, rotate those ankles a few times, and you're ready to go. You do your walking segment where you're going to go from 3 minutes up to possibly 30 or 40 minutes. But your goal is to shoot for at least that 20 straight through. And if you don't get there, that's fine. You just do what you can. Okay. And then as you come back in, finishing up, you're slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. Let that heart rate come back down. Let your breathing slow back down. You stop, you do your stretches again. And this time, take your time and stretch really nicely. And then you're done. And again, when you're done, you prop those legs up if you need to, especially the longer you've gone, and rest those legs. All right. 2 hours later, if you're feeling pain, more pain than when you started, then you've done too much, and I need you to slow it down a little bit, okay? And again, any questions you would have about any of this, I'd be glad to talk to you about it if you have questions and concerns. And you can reach me at the Enright Center. Best way would be email, and that would be K, like in kite, K Campbell, and it is CAMPBELL. And that would be at Area 10 Agency, all one big word, .org. And you can also look us up online if you're trying to get in touch with us on our website. You do know that we have 2 locations, the Area 10 Indirect Center at the mall and also in Ellisville. We'd be glad to talk to you some more about either our programs, our walking programs, or your own individual walking plan. And so do feel free to reach out if you need to. All right, everybody have a great walk out there today, and I hope to see you sometime soon.